Across history, wealth has always fascinated people. From ancient empires to modern billionaires, we track fortunes like they define power itself. Today, names like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk dominate conversations about money, while debates about the 1% shape how we understand inequality. But if you step back and look at history, something surprising emerges. There has always been a limit to wealth. Even the richest figures, from industrial magnates like John D. Rockefeller to emperors like Augustus Caesar, operated within the boundaries of their economic systems. Except for one man. In the 14th century, a ruler from West Africa didn't just accumulate wealth, he disrupted the global economy with it. His name was Mansa Musa, and his story is unlike anything the world has ever seen. The empire built on gold and salt. To understand Mansa Musa, you first have to understand the world he ruled. He was the emperor of the Mali Empire, one of the largest and most powerful empires of medieval Africa. At its peak in the early 1300s, Mali stretched across vast parts of West Africa, including modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, and beyond. But its true power wasn't just in its size, it was in its resources. Mali sat on top of some of the richest gold deposits in the world, particularly in regions like Bambouk and Bure. Historians estimate that during this period, nearly half of the world's gold supply originated from this empire. That gold flowed into major trade centers like Cairo, Venice, and Constantinople, making Mali a central player in the global economy long before Europe's rise. Yet gold wasn't the only source of wealth. In the north, the Sahara Desert provided something equally valuable: salt. In a time before refrigeration, salt was essential for preserving food and maintaining health. It was so valuable that in some cases, it was traded weight for weight with gold. Trade between these regions often followed a fascinating method known as silent barter. Traders would leave goods like salt at a designated location and withdraw. Later, gold miners would arrive, leave what they believed was a fair amount of gold, and depart without ever meeting the traders face to face. It was an economy built not just on resources, but on trust. At the center of this system stood the emperor, known by the title Mansa, meaning King of Kings. And that emperor was Musa, the accidental king. Interestingly, Mansa Musa was never supposed to rule. He became king after his predecessor, Abu Bakr II, embarked on a bold and mysterious expedition into the Atlantic Ocean. According to historical accounts, Abu Bakr outfitted a fleet of ships to explore what lay beyond the horizon, but he never returned. With the throne suddenly vacant, Musa assumed power. Unlike his predecessor, Musa chose not to look west toward the unknown ocean. Instead, he turned his focus inward, toward strengthening his empire and expanding its influence through trade, culture, and religion. And then, in 1324, he made a decision that would forever change his legacy and the world's perception of Africa. The journey that shocked the world. Mansa Musa decided to undertake the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is expected to complete at least once in their lifetime. But Musa wasn't an ordinary pilgrim. He didn't travel with a small group or a modest caravan. He traveled with what can only be described as a moving city. Historical sources describe a procession of tens of thousands of people: soldiers, servants, scholars, and attendants. Thousands of enslaved individuals carried gold bars, while camels transported enormous quantities of gold dust across the Sahara. The scale of the journey was staggering. Everywhere the caravan passed, it left an impression. Markets were overwhelmed. Supplies were bought in bulk. Entire towns were transformed overnight by the sudden arrival of wealth. But the real impact of Musa's journey wouldn't be felt until he reached one of the most important cities of the time, Cairo. When generosity became economic chaos. When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, he did something that seemed admirable. He gave away gold. He distributed it to the poor. He gifted it to officials. He spent lavishly in markets, often paying far more than the asking price. At first, this appeared to be an act of incredible generosity, but in economic terms, it was a disaster. Gold derived its value from scarcity. The more limited it was, the more valuable it became. By flooding Cairo with large quantities of gold, Musa unintentionally devalued the currency. The supply of gold increased dramatically, but demand remained relatively stable. As a result, the value of gold dropped and prices of goods began to rise. This created a form of inflation that affected Cairo for years. Some accounts suggest it took over a decade for the economy to fully recover. In simple terms, Mansa Musa had so much wealth that his spending disrupted the financial system of an entire region. And in a twist of irony, by the time he began his return journey, Musa had spent so much that he reportedly needed to borrow money to get home, taking loans at high interest rates from the very city he had destabilized. A king who changed the world's perception. Mansa Musa's journey didn't just impact economies, it reshaped global awareness. News of his wealth spread far beyond Africa. Stories of a powerful African king with unimaginable riches reached Europe, where knowledge of sub-Saharan Africa was limited and often misunderstood. One of the most significant moments came in 1375 when the Catalan Atlas, a detailed map of the known world, depicted Musa seated on a throne, holding a large piece of gold. The image carried a powerful message: Africa was not a distant, unknown land, it was a place of immense wealth. This perception had lasting consequences. European powers, particularly Portugal and Spain, became increasingly interested in West Africa. The idea of accessing gold directly helped fuel exploration along the African coast, eventually contributing to the Age of Exploration. In a way, Mansa Musa's journey helped place Africa on the global economic map, though it would later lead to complex and often troubling interactions with Europe. Building a legacy of knowledge. While the world focused on Musa's gold, his most important contributions lay elsewhere. After returning from Mecca, Mansa Musa invested heavily in education, architecture, and culture. He brought scholars, architects, and artists from regions like Cairo and Al-Andalus to Mali. Among them was the architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who helped design impressive structures, including mosques that still stand today. Musa transformed the city of Timbuktu into a center of learning and scholarship. Institutions like the Sankore University became hubs of intellectual activity, attracting students and scholars from across the Islamic world. Timbuktu's libraries eventually held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts covering subjects like mathematics, astronomy, law, and theology. In fact, during this period, books were sometimes considered more valuable than gold. This reveals something remarkable about Musa's vision. He understood that while gold could fluctuate in value, knowledge was a lasting asset, something that could outlive any empire. The true meaning of wealth. Mansa Musa is often remembered as the richest man in history, with modern estimates placing his wealth at the equivalent of hundreds of billions of dollars. But focusing only on his gold misses the deeper lesson of his story. His wealth was so vast that it could influence economies, reshape perceptions, and alter the course of history. Yet his most enduring impact came not from what he spent, but from what he built. He showed that true power isn't just about possessing resources, it's about how those resources are used. Gold can be lost, spent, or devalued. But knowledge, culture, and institutions can endure for generations. A legacy that still matters today. Centuries later, the story of Mansa Musa continues to resonate. It challenges the way we think about wealth. It raises questions about economic systems, the effects of excess, and the responsibility that comes with power. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that Africa was not always seen as a developing region, but as a center of global wealth and intellectual achievement. Mansa Musa didn't just live within history. For a moment, he reshaped it. Mansa Musa didn't just have wealth, he changed the world with it. The real question is, would you spend it? Or build something that lasts? If you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.